of course, still in the Virginia side of things, but as this trajectory takes it northward, that could then take it into Maryland, so Maryland Point and Nanjemoy. Folks in that vicinity need to be on guard as well. We've been drawing on our tracks here to kind of give you an idea as this kind of works its way northward, what to be looking for as far as what towns, which areas you want to be on guard from Arnold's Corner, King George County Health Clinic, up towards Fairview Beach and Wellington Beach, as well as the Maryland Point, Grayton, and Nanjemoy. We're seeing some tightening there in that rotation where you see that little spin. It looks like a little counterclockwise spin. That's just an indicator that our computer system pops in there where we see some of that spin in the radar, looking at some winds going toward the radar and away from the radar, and this cell continue to track northward. And right now, the biggest concern in that portion of King George, our friends in the northern neck, but it will be crossing the Potomac and then into west-southwestern portions of Charles County, and that's why as well Charles County is too under the gun and under the severe alert until 6:15. All of us still on guard. Jordan, you were looking at that camera a little while ago. A pretty good view as we wait for the sun to come up. Unfortunately, the sun's a little bit later to come up, but definitely seeing those low clouds out there.
Yeah, unlike last night, we had no daylight to look at our cameras with the storms that were moving through. But now, King George, Virginia, I pointed in the direction of this area of rotation, and where you see the darker clouds on the right side of your screen, that's where the lowering is. Not seeing any ground contact, at least as of now, but this storm is moving north, so it's about to cross Potomac River, as Brian mentioned, into Charles County, Maryland. So Waldorf, La Plata, we need to get ready to be in our safe zone. We're not in that tornado warning just yet, but get ready. The storm's coming in your direction. So if you're going to be heading out the door soon, if you can wait till the storm passes to be on the safe side, highly recommend. Otherwise, try to get there safely and have your weather app ready to go to receive any alerts in case your tornado warning is issued for your area. Yes, this camera view, we're looking back toward the north and west from King George, so we're looking in the direction of this area of rotation, and it's still starting to tighten up. Wellington Beach on the Maryland side, get ready. Rotation's crossing the Potomac River now, and this will continue to move in that direction. So places like Grayton, Maryland Point, Highway 425, Highway 224, we're talking Charles County, southern Charles County in particular, getting ready to see this area of rotation move in. Here's a couple other products of the radar. So you see those oranges and pinks. That's indicating at least a lot of spin going on in the lower levels of the atmosphere. This is what we call spectrum width on the radar. And we can also pull up the debris tracker. And Brian, I got to tell you, last night we were watching areas of debris on a couple of those tornadoes that did touch down. That is not the case, it looks like, with this one. I'm not seeing obvious debris signatures here from the debris tracker, but not to say that this thing can't drop. It could start to pick up some debris, a lot of trees in this area, of course some homes and some other structures that we'd have to be concerned about. But at least that's the good news now, is at least from a radar standpoint, we do not see any verification that there is a tornado on the ground. So we're continuing to watch this area of tight rotation. Charles County, get ready. The storm is now moving, or at least I should say the area of rotation is now moving out of King George County. So King George County, at least from a rotation standpoint, you're in the clear. Eventually they're going to trim back this tornado warning to only include Charles County. If that rotation remains tight, we'll see the warning get extended farther to the north. So that could be for places like farther north on Highway 425, that's Doncaster, Hilltop, Highway 6, that goes out of La Plata to the west, could be seeing that warning soon. So just a heads up as we continue to track this area of rotation. Brian, you have a wide view. Let's see what else is going on. This is the only warning we're talking about this hour.
And that's what I wanted to point out, because you may be, questioning. This is in a very isolated spot of our area, but we have a lot of rain that continues to lift through. And you can see these bands that continue to kind of feed in from the south. The area of low pressure is down to our south and west, and these are kind of rotating around the center of circulation of post-tropical cyclone Debbie. And until this continues to lift northward and get past our area, we are still under the gun as we have these kind of some of this spin in the atmosphere, particularly as some of these outer bands continue to lift northward. And that is why we're watching this so carefully. Remember, we talk about tornadoes. We mentioned that this is Doppler indicated versus, let's say, if it is confirmed or observed. We have to take them all seriously. Even if we haven't seen them on the ground, we're always going to put that warning out and bring you that alert, because at any point that circulation, which could be aloft, could eventually drop down and touch the ground. I just want to mention that they did drop the King George portion count of the warning just now because it is leaving out of King George, but it does continue for Charles County as of 6:02. That severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located over Fairview Beach, moving to the north at 40 miles per hour, which is a very good clip right there. It continues to work its way northward. We just want to be careful because there is that spin. If you're in that area, which we will then highlight here again, this is right there now for mainly Charles County now as they're continuing to kind of drop out portions of King George County. Charles County as the radar slowly, it's just spinning or updating. Here we go. You can see now, let's push in a little bit. That warning has been allowed to be tightened up. I know it looks like a weird shape right there, folks. The reason you're seeing that weird shape is because it's over the river right there. And so it gives you a little bit of a weird kind of depiction there. So it's this area here. We're going to just push in a little bit tighter before we look at the radar again. Wellington Beach. There's just not as many places because that's over water. Wellington Beach, Maryland Point, Grayton, just to the west of Riverside. This is 214, just to the south of Nanjemoy. And as I mentioned, that system moving to the north, 40 miles per hour. I mean, that is a pretty good clip. So let's draw in a little bit of a track here to give you an idea of what we're looking at here as this continues its track northward. And moving at that speed, we're talking up towards Maryland Point and Grayton and Doncaster and places that are along the western side there of Charles County as this system continues to track its way off to the north and west. But that isolated cell there potentially having some spin within it, as Jordan was pointing out, looking at the different scans here, trying to highlight, where you can see with the brighter and the lighter, the darker colors kind of coming together, where's that potential for that spin, although our indicator here on our graphic system not showing that as well from that early rotation. But the bottom line is it is this area that we have the most concern about from that Maryland Point, Nanjemoy area, right down there along that 214 is the highway just to the southwest of Hilltop. Once again, all of this part of a bigger situation where we also have some flooding concerns. And I want to point this out as well because these areas that we have highlighted in the red that are under these flood warnings, like upper Montgomery, upper Howard and Carroll County, and as well out to portions of the Shenandoah Valley, those darker reds under the flash flood warnings, those are imminent concerns, meaning there is water on the ground and water that is obstructing roadways. Our own Tom Rousey has been out navigating that. He was out in Front Royal just a little while ago. And I want to point out that in those areas where the water is high, you got to turn around, don't drown. I mean, it is not worth it to try to drive across those areas because you have no idea the depth of the water underneath where you are driving. So we want to hit that home as well. Flash flooding is equally dangerous. So we obviously want to keep you abreast of flash flooding situations as well. And that'll continue to be a factor because the whole area is under a flood watch at least until 8 o'clock p.m. this evening. But the current active warning, this one little chunk here, but it is in our viewing area, southwestern Charles County, under that tornado warning, at least now until 6:15, although they can drop it earlier if they see it losing a little bit of intensity. But in addition, you could be seeing some heavier downpours. Not seeing a ton of lightning in this system, but it's about the winds too, because there's quite a bit of wind there off the surface. And some of those heftier cells, Jordan, can bring that gusty wind from aloft right on down to the surface.
Yeah, exactly your point. I mean, there's so much spin going on. In fact, we'll show you one of the maps we use to forecast some spin. As we see Max 2 pulled up here, we call this the low-level jet. What does that mean? That is basically winds at 5,000 feet, and this is indicating all that spin on the back side of what's left of Debbie. I mean, you can see the wind arrows in the orange. That's indicating your winds at 5,000 feet. Notice how they're in almost a completely different direction than the white arrows. That's the surface winds. So that's what causes all that spin in the atmosphere here as the remnants of Debbie continue to move closer to our region. Where we see the oranges and the darker tans and the reds, that's where the low-level jet gets a little bit stronger. So Winchester, Frederick, Maryland, your winds aloft are 60 to 65 miles per hour. So any flights taking on or off are going to be quite bumpy as this continues to move through. I bet some flights are probably halting or at least temporarily stopping for now. So again, that's what we're looking at in terms of our spin. Back to the tornado warning, still indicating some pretty good rotation, Brian. I don't think this thing is weakening as of now. I would expect them to probably extend this warning just farther north into Charles County because this rotation is not at least broadening out. At least the last couple of rounds were as the storms were farther south, closer to Spotsylvania, King George area. and even parts of Stafford County earlier. This one's actually holding on a little more, I'd say. So it's tracking almost right up Highway 425. So I know you showed that latest track, but we want to get ready for places like Doncaster, Highway 6, that goes west out of La Plata from Hilltop to Doncaster on Highway 6. If you're in any of those spots, get ready for potentially that tornado warning to get extended towards your area. And again, Grayton, almost seeing that rotation right on top of Grayton. That's southern Charles County and southern Maryland, that rotation tracking just over the town of Grayton, the community there. So again, Brian, give us some reminders too when we are seeing a tornado warning, because they're just not too common around here.
Yeah, not too common at all. You know, I will say one of the better things that is happening here this morning, Jordan, is that at least we have some daylight here, because we did have some severe storms last night that our chief meteorologist Veronica Johnson was on from late 5 o'clock hour all the way up through almost midnight last night. And when it's dark and these systems are rain wrapped, it is hard to see. Obviously, with a little bit of daylight, gives us a little bit more comfort. But nonetheless, here are some of the things you need to know when you have a tornado warning for your area, like that western portion of Charles County. What does that mean? That means if you're in that vicinity, you need to follow these steps. You need to shelter in a basement or interior room. Not everyone has a basement. I go to school visits all the time. You may live in an apartment or a condominium. You just need to put as much separation as you can between your person and that exterior wall, so that if that tornado does pick up some debris and does throw something at your way, that you have a lot of separation between you and the outside. So staying away from windows is key. Even if you don't have an interior bathroom or laundry room, I tell kids all the time, and they sometimes chuckle, you can go into a closet. You're not going there for a long time. We know currently that this warning runs until 6:15, and so until 6:15, that is when the warning remains. And right now, they just put an update here just moments ago that it will continue till 6:15. That is the time period you'll keep in mind. Lower level of your home, and you always shelter until the warning is done. You know, these tornado warnings are something you can get from the First Alert Weather app, which you can download, and you can enact those alerts. Also, severe alerts like flash flooding or tornado, they also come from the National Weather Service as part of a government product. So you want to make sure that you're in your phone, whether it's an Apple product or an Android product, and make sure you have those alerts enacted and turned on even when your phone is in a sleep mode, because particularly like this system coming in late at night when many are asleep or early in the morning, we want to make sure that you're have a way to continue to get those alerts or those warnings, because, you know, if you're asleep, you might not be paying attention. So here's the latest. There is that warning. We'll get in a little bit closer here till 6:15. We're coming up on 6:12 right now. We're going to get in a little bit closer here. You mentioned these areas not as inhabited, but still we get a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter here to kind of see some of the towns. But I would say now, as we look towards Maryland Point and Grayton, I would slide this up a little bit more northward, because we are seeing the heavier cell there starting to lift up a little bit more northward. So that's going to continue to bring that system and the concern that we have for this area a little bit more towards the north, as we were kind of pointing out that some areas that are on the northern side now of Charles County need to be a little bit paying closer attention, because as this system continues its progression northward, will they expand that tornado warning into additional portions of Charles County north of Nanjemoy, like Hilltop, and up along the highway there of, 224 along 6 and 425. This, once again, tornado warning, because some spin was denoted in the atmosphere. It was not spotted on the ground, but once again, our radar indicator here is giving some, indications that right there is some spin. And it's interesting, Jordan, this is right on the northern extent of the warning. So if this really is continuing to see some spin, I would think we would need to see that warning expanded northward, as long as we continue to kind of see that little bit of almost like a couplet with that spinning happening right there on the northern extent. So areas that are just in this vicinity and just to the north. Yep,
there it is.
There they go.
All right.
They've expanded it. Why? Because we continue to see that spin right there, and they've said, okay, this spin is continuing, so we can't really, stop this just yet. This is continuing this north trek. So that's up towards Route 6. That's Doncaster, and you got to help me here with that. Does anyone know the Chicamuxen? Chickamuxen? I apologize if I'm not saying that right. I've been in this area for 30-some years, and I am not familiar with that town name. But it's this area, and basically also encompassing Indian Head. We've also always heard of Indian Head to the west of Pamunkey. This is running basically just to the edge, the parallel, if you will, to the Potomac River. The Potomac River is over here working its way here between Virginia and Maryland. But there's that spin right there that is kind of indicated there. We see those colors there on the velocity scan for us in the weather department. environment, giving us some indication that there are winds that are going in different directions. And because of that, they have expanded this tornado warning to go northward to include newer areas because it has expanded. Let's put this back out here and give the latest update on this here. We have the watch obviously up for the entire area, but for this warned area, the new box. Jordan, what time? I'm trying to see what time did that go to.
Yeah, this new one's till 6:30. So all the towns you mentioned in the path of this storm, and we just talked about that earlier, as expected, this rotation is not broadening out. It's remaining quite tight in terms of a velocity signature, something that we look at in terms of our radar products. So.
Yeah, let's hop over to Max 2 so we can show what Jordan's showing you here. I mean, that was the thing. Some of these storms we have not seen as well some of those signatures. It was just hard to see with some of those cells moving through last night. But when you can physically see those colorations, Jordan, I mean, that is a good indicator to us, to the trained eye, that there is something happening in that atmosphere. And the question is it getting to the surface? But regardless or not, it's an area you want to pay close attention to and heed the warnings.
Right. So we're just going to zoom right in. Street level view. You go on Google Maps or Apple Maps or whichever app you use for maps on your smartphone, you can look at your location, and we're going to try to do that for you as well. Bowie Road and Gilroy Road, where those streets eventually come together, that's where the rotation is tightest. Now, doesn't mean there's a tornado on the ground, but if you were to go outside, which we don't recommend, please do not go outside. But if you were, you would likely be seeing the sky spinning, or at least the clouds up there rotating as this storm continues to track farther north. Here's Highway 6, some more streets. Kimberly Place, Bowie Road, this is along Highway 6. We have Hemingway Place as well. This is going to be Zimmerman Place, State Forest Road, Burnt Pine Trail, and Shelterwood Place, Logging Lane. Brian, these are just a handful of some of the streets here in this warned area. Smallwood Church Road, this is now north of Highway 6, Doncaster Drive, Ryson Drive. Excuse me if I mispronounce some of these streets here. We have not been in this area in quite some time. We've got Gamecock Place here, Lincoln's Road as well, Efton Place, High Ground Farm Place. So again, these spots north of Highway 6. Now there's Highway 224. So these all these cross streets that go through Highway 224. There's Ryson and Charles County, Sweetman Road, Smallwood Road, and let's see, we have Smallwood Park Road, Sweden Point Road too. So Brian, those are just a handful of some of the streets and this warning. Get ready for the rotation. It's coming up. Doesn't mean a tornado's on the ground, but with the indication that nothing's been broadening out, I mean, it's maintaining strength. So this could easily be one that drops here in the next couple of minutes. If that happens, Weather Service is confident with it. It looks like they could be upgrading this to that tornado observed. So the polygon would change to the pink color, indicating that it would be on the ground, but right now that's not the case.
Yeah, and we continue to keep a close eye here, Jordan. I'm going to pull back up to my Max 1. I pulled up that camera because we do have our King George camera out there. Just some really juicy air mass out there. We've got all that moisture in the atmosphere. Very sticky, steamy feel. It's that tropical moisture that continues to feed in. And as we've been talking, you know, the National Hurricane Center put out their last report on Debbie. But when we talk about tropical storms and tropical systems, even inland and further away from their genesis or where they made landfall, they often can have wide-reaching impacts. I mean, we've had some big impacts. One of our biggest tornado outbreaks for our area was back in Ivan, back in 2004. Also, in addition, they also are usually the type of systems that can help our area get out of a drought situation as well, which is, I think, is going to be very helpful for our friends off to the west out there in the western part of our viewing area that are under that extreme drought. This system continues to move off to the north, 45 miles per hour, according to our friends at the National Weather Center. That is a fast-moving system, and you know, we just want you to know that if you're in that vicinity there, from Bryan's Road to Potomac Heights, Marbury, Ironsides over to Ryson, it's those areas that we're watching super carefully because that is where we currently have that warned area. We'll get back over here to the radar to show you. I also want to point out a little bit bigger view that we are also tracking, you know, quite a bit of rain that is pushing across the metro area. So if you are commuting in here on a Friday morning, particularly on the west side of the city, let's just put this into motion, some heavier bands of rain right there, just parallel to 95, up towards the 395 split on the west side over to the 270 split, more of this hefty rain kind of filling in. And I just want to widen out a little bit further because kind of watching this fetch, Jordan, that all continues to kind of come come from the south. So the area of low pressure is down here to the south, but all this moisture kind of rotating up and around, and eventually this all will kind of rotate out of here. But until that does, we're going to continue to see the potential for some of this severe weather as we've seen here this morning. And hopefully, you know, when you went to bed last night, we knew that coming through the overnight into this morning, this is when we could have some of our most active time. This is not traditionally typically when you see it, right? You think of like late afternoon heating, but it's not just about the daytime heating for this situation. This is that spin, all that spin in the atmosphere that is left over from Debbie. And as I've been pointing out here, this area highlighted here to the west of Hilltop and to the west of Mount Pisgah and just to the south of Indian Head, that is where we've been noticing the tightest spin right there. And there you can see, I mean, our radar here, look at that, just showing this indication that, hey, this feels a pretty good confidence here that in this vicinity here, there is some spin that it continues kind of that trek northward. I mean, that would take it right there kind of parallel to the Potomac River and then potentially cross it right over into the other side of the river. So if you are watching and paying attention here this morning down through eastern Prince William County and southeastern portions of Fairfax County, as this continues its trek northward, we do have the potential, see the potential that this could indeed be trekking northward, and they could extend some of these warnings into the southeastern portion of Fairfax County over towards, you know, Mount Vernon area, you know, George Washington's home, over towards Gunston Heights, Lake Ridge, and places of that nature over towards Montclair. So even if you're not under the warning right now, I'd be paying close attention. Here's that look at that pretty strong intensity. And I mean, Jordan, if you're not mistaken, you can kind of almost see what's trying to look to develop as a little bit of a hook pattern there on the radar.
It is trying, yeah. But the good news is, Brian, we don't have the environment that we would typically see out in the plains. We don't have the veering winds on the backside. We don't have the dry air kind of coming in behind this system right now. So the environment is not favorable, I would say, for those strong EF2 plus tornadoes. Now, there are tornadoes that can happen. They have happened, and some already have been rated in that EF0 to EF1, which means winds up to 110 miles per hour. So these tornadoes with tropical systems, they can cause damage. Unfortunately, they can happen with little to no warning. That's why these warnings come up and they go down so quickly. Let's go back to Max 2. There it is. So I wanted to highlight the tornado watch because this was now just extended until 2 o'clock. So Brian, DC area, Baltimore, we're now under the tornado threat once again. That continues until 2 o'clock this afternoon. As the watch was extended, it looks like the remnants and the leftovers in terms of moisture spin from Debbie is still pulling to the northeast very slowly. That's been the theme with this system. It's been moving quite slow. It is moving faster than it was over Florida and Georgia. That's why we're not getting a foot of rain in some spots, but at least in terms of the system itself, going through at slow enough speeds to at least keep the tornado threat going for the next several hours. I want to pull up one of our cameras. This is Lackey High School, just outside of Indian Head, Maryland. So Brian, this is in that area of rotation. Unfortunately, this is one that we cannot move around, but this is pointing in a direction of, actually, I can't even tell you what direction this camera's pointing.
I don't know it either. Sorry.
But at least from this view, we don't see anything that's of too much concern, but still, Lackey High School, that area, take it seriously. That means lowest level of your home. If you have a basement, go there. Most interior room, as many walls between you and the outside as possible. We have to stress, if you're in a mobile structure, a mobile home, get out of that mobile home and go to a sturdy building. There's been so many cases where mobile homes have been toppled over, and by not even a strong tornado, Brian. It doesn't take more than 90 mile per hour winds sometimes to topple over mobile homes. So we need to stress that importance. We'll take you back to the radar. And yeah, so okay, new tornado warning, there it is, just as you mentioned, Brian, Fairfax County. Here we go, DC metro area, that is a tornado warning now, southern Fairfax County, parts of Alexandria, parts of Mount Vernon. This is now till 6:45 in the morning, so we're now getting closer to the morning rush hour. Interstate 395, all the way from, we'll start it in southern Fairfax County. That's going to be from the Occoquan, Woodbridge, all the way up towards southeast sides of the Beltway, Annandale, North Springfield, Franconia, West Springfield. That tornado warning, if you're waking up right now because that smartphone went off saying a tornado warning is issued in your area, this is what we're tracking, that area of rotation that is still about to cross over the Potomac River from Charles County now into southern Fairfax County. Brian, the good news with this, at least, is that this is not observed. We don't
Yeah.
have that pink polygon just
We
yet.
do not just yet, but it is interesting because we have seen that core of circulation, Jordan, prolonged. I mean, so we've been tracking it coming out from the northern neck through across portions of southern Maryland and now into Virginia. So obviously this cell is a pretty intense. Continue with that spin in the atmosphere. All part of this, basically the outer bands of, you will, of the remnants of Debbie, which continue to rotate through here. And because there's that spin in the atmosphere, that's why we've been watching it so carefully. A little bit of a lull into the overnight we had for a little bit in between, but now with these bands lifting through here, more concern once again. And as you're kind of honing in there, kind of looking at some of those areas to see where we see the most likelihood of some of that rotation. But obviously holding together because it continues to track eastward. This dangerous storm continues to track, and I was looking at some of the areas that'll be impacting here in the coming time as it continues its trek northward. Jordan has also picked up some speed because according to the radar, this cell is picked up some speed now, moving almost to 55 miles per hour. I mean, that's going at a faster speed than most people get to drive here on 395 on a work day. But some of the areas that are under concern here, including Springfield and Groveton, Fort Belvoir needs to be paying attention and get to your safe spot. Woodbridge, Burke, and Lorton, Franconia, Hybla Valley, Newington.
Yeah, Brian, we've got the estimated time of arrival now on Max 2.
Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't see that popped up. Thank you. Because, I mean, that's just, it's moving at such a fast clip. So, I mean, that's part of the issue there, that is just racing northward. But following that trajectory, Jordan, I mean, that brings it right here through our southwestern suburbs there, crossing over 95. So, obviously impactful for folks that are on the commute, working their way up the 95 corridor, and then potentially, crossing over on the western side of the Beltway into 66 if this continues to hold together. So, I mean, not is this only unique because we're talking about early in the morning, but also impacting some of our larger commuter routes. And hopefully, because we've been talking about this for a while now, that folks were prepared and know that this was a possibility this morning. But now we know from the latest update from the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center that because we'll continue to have this spin through the midday, the overall watch, which means we need to be on guard, that watch now extended. It does not end at 7 a.m. It is going to carry us all the way till 2 p.m. this afternoon. As we continue to push in there, Jordan, kind of showing where we think some of that circulation is.
Yeah.
Possibly still like right there on the edge of Charles County and then moving across the Potomac there. It's right there, right on the edge. So that's kind of, I mean, almost like, if it were to touch down, like water spout situation there, Jordan, because that is the Potomac right there. But that trajectory, taking it northward and from our southern Maryland viewing area right into, I think, a bit more inhabited portions of northern Virginia from Woodbridge northward there. That warning now, what'd you say, running up until 6:45?
Yeah, that's 6:45.
Moving at such a fast clip. So, I mean, at 55 miles per hour, that cell lifting northward. But let's talk, too, about that, some of those yellows and oranges and reds, because in addition to that spin in the atmosphere, we're also talking about blinding rains. I mean, this is some intense tropical moisture out there. So we have all this moisture in the atmosphere, and it is being thrust down, at such an intense rate that really, look at that 1.5 to 2 inch an hour rainfall rates I saw earlier, like 1.66. That just means that it's like coming down in buckets. So if you were even just trying to drive up 95 right now, encountering some of those heavy bands, definitely going to have your hands in the proper place. I thought was 10 and 2. My son just got his learner's permit. It's now 4 and 8. Who knew that? It's now 4 and 8 is where your hands are supposed to be. That is the Virginia law. I'm just putting it out there because I had him lose a test. I got a test answer wrong because I'm old-fashioned. But 4 and 8 is where you're supposed to be. I mean, this is a highly populated area as well, so hopefully you're heeding our warnings. If you're not commuting, that you're in, your home and getting to your safe space, because this is portions of Arlington, portions of Fairfax, portions of Prince William County, very highly inhabited areas. Obviously, normally at this time of day, this hour of the morning, you would be heading out the door, potentially heading out to work. But this morning, if you can, we'd like you to kind of put that on hold, particularly if you're in this area, because this area under that tornado warning, active right now till 6:45, been tracking this area, which was been pulling out of King George and then into Charles County, and now into Fairfax County. And we watched that same area actually earlier this morning at 4:45. That little cluster died out, and then this one picked back up again. So we kind of can tell right along that vicinity that this cell, obviously having a little bit extra forcing or something in the atmosphere that's been helping kind of get this a little bit more generated. Let's look a little bit closer here. Just want to kind of try to find some more of those little towns in there, just so we know what we're talking about here. From Mount Vernon, let's go down here all the way where 123 crosses over there from Bayside Park, let's say, over towards Woodbridge and Gunston Heights and Accotink and over towards Newington and northward right on up to West Springfield and Franconia. I mean, this is basically along that and east of that 95 corridor, running right up to where the old Nixon Bowl it is called, with the potential that there is some spin, some circulation in this. We were watching earlier, and there's this rotation that now looks like it is now kind of lifting across the river and now in the extreme southern portions here of Fairfax and over on the very, very edge there of Woodbridge, working its way northward, 55 miles per hour. Winds are super strong in this system, so gusty winds, heavy downpours. Haven't seen a lot of lightning, and I don't think that was the case too last night, Jordan. Haven't seen a ton of lightning with these systems that have been pushing through.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton of lightning with the leftovers. I mean, the atmosphere is so... there's a lot of juice, there's a lot of moisture, and then sometimes a lot of that instability gets limited because of the cloud cover. Of course, we have higher temperatures, a little more sunshine. That was farther to the south. There was some lightning across North Carolina. So that's the latest there on the tornado warning. We'll zoom things out. Brian, we continue to highlight this. This rotation, it's been holding on for over half an hour now. And I'm actually a little surprised because with these tropical systems, these rotations, I mean, they just kind of come and go quickly. They don't hold on too long typically like they would out in the plains with your classic setup, your classic type of severe weather event. So this one's been managing to hold on, I think, pretty well. I was just on my X account posting this to the account to get it out on social media. We're also on our online right now. So our news desk has our program right now streaming on Facebook, hopefully, and as well as our YouTube. So getting into your safe zone, you don't have a television set in your safe zone, we'll take that smartphone with you, and you can pull us up on our YouTube channel. We are live, just like we are here, Brian, on our YouTube channel, at least as we continue to track this storm through Fairfax County.
And that's the key here. I mean, we've been saying that, it's particularly even overnight into the early morning. You always want to have a way that you can receive alerts. And the good news is nowadays, most of us have a smartphone, and you do automatically get a lot of these warnings sent right directly to you. But you also can sign up for a third-party app like the First Alert Weather app, which is always good to have, because in addition to getting the alerts, you can actually pull up the radar. I love it. You can jump in there and you can look at the radar to kind of see what's headed towards your vicinity and know what's headed towards your area ahead of time. We put all of our information out there to kind of keep you in tune. As we recap here, I mean, this is a severe weather day, and in addition to that active warning, which is happening right now, look, they can just see that, a warning. So you see how the shape changed a little bit as they get more radar scans and they continue to look at what's happening there. This is the Jordan's radar screen there. You can see that they kind of adjusted that tornado warning box. We call them polygons. They're shapes. Those shapes are, honed in on identifying the area, the specific area where that part of the storm is, which is very helpful because, we're talking about little slivers of different counties, but this gives you a good indication, particularly where you can see, Jordan, those two colors coming together. We talk about that often when you see the different, I don't know if that's a word. I'm making up a word. The difference in the colors, all right? The reds and the greens, the going away from the radar and the coming toward the radar. And when you see that, that means those winds are diverging or going in different directions. And that is a good indicator of the potential of some spin. But as we keep saying, until we get something observed, an observed tornado on the ground, meaning a spotter, a storm spotter has actually visibly seen it, maybe a member of the EMS or a member of the police department. Until it's observed, it is just meaning a radar indicated. And so that spin could be happening. It could be spinning in the clouds. Does it drop down? Not necessarily, but it has the potential. So if we know that spin is aloft and has the potential to drop down, of course, in that area where that track moves, we're going to continue to warn folks about that, because if it were to drop down, we want you to be prepared. Look at that, those areas right there from Accotink up to Newington out there, as that warning for the portions of Charles County now gone. This continues for the portions of Fairfax and Prince William County. And right there where you see those winds, I guess those diverging winds just to the southwest, southwest of Accotink. That is the area that we're watching where I think some of that center of circulation continues to spin. And you're right, it has been long-lived because a lot of the cells and systems we were watching through the overnight this morning, they can spin up quickly, then they dissipate. Then they can spin up. We usually say, particularly when we have these leftover tropical systems, we look for what we call quick spin-ups. But in this situation, we've definitely seen a prolonged period of spin in the atmosphere. And because of that, obviously, watching its trajectory and its path, because
Brian,
with that spin, it continues to come down.
Brian, we have an update. Alexandria City Public School offices will be opening 2 hours late due to that tornado watch in effect. And now that we have the warning in place for parts of Alexandria, definitely a good call there.
Oh man, so that's some good information coming in there. Yeah, because the key here today is that if you can put off what you were going to do for a little bit longer, that would make a little bit more sense because, as we mentioned, this threat for this current warning, runs up until 6:45. But the actual tornado watch, meaning being on guard, now pushed to 2 p.m. this afternoon. So this is an event that will be prolonged throughout the entirety of the midday. So at any point, some of these cells coming through could pack that punch, could have that spin. But in addition to the spin, those heavy tropical downpours that are leading to some flooding concerns, particularly off west, and even some urban flooding can't be ruled out. Even the visibility. If you encounter a flooded roadway, we saw Tom out there this morning, we'll check back with him in a little bit. If you encounter that flooded roadway, we tell you to turn around, don't drown. Jordan, I see you drawing on there, right there. That's kind of where we're denoting where we think the best spin is within that worn cell, correct?
Yeah, and I think over the last couple of scans from the radar, the radar scans every couple of minutes, I'm not seeing it actually as tight. It is starting to broaden out, especially from the perspective when we look a couple of thousand feet off the ground. That's where you have some of those lighter reds and the greens. And you notice this is the current scan at 6:35 this morning, but as we go 5 minutes ago, the greens were a little bit brighter. So that's indication that maybe this is now finally starting to broaden out as it tracks farther to the north. Rotation is right over Highway 1, just south of Newington. There's Highway 286. Some more street names here. That's Telegraph Road, Jeff Todd Way, Old Mill Road. We have Morning View Lane, Beulah Street, northern sections of Telegraph Road, Kingstown Village Parkway. There's South Van Dorn Street. That's a very busy intersection as well, just going to Franconia. So Franconia, Fair Vernon. This includes Interstate 395. Brian, the mall's down here too. Just outside the Beltway off 95. So the mall's in this. Thankfully, the mall's not open right now this early. Of course, the mall would have several places for tornado shelter for shoppers to take shelter if that was the case. But now that we're getting into the morning rush hour, we're already there. Interstate 95, 395, and parts of the Beltway. As we mentioned, Brian, too, this is moving at highway speed almost, 55 miles per hour. So it's moving very quickly, and speed limits here in the DC Metro are at 55 as well. So at least trying to outrun this thing, I don't think that's a smart move unless you're going, perpendicular to the direction of the storm. But still, we definitely want to be in our tornado safe zone. If you haven't left the house just yet, I would wait. Wait till this thing passes. Wait till it expires. That way you don't have to get in your car and worry about, is there going to be a tornado or not? Just play it safe with this thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll just pop up, Max, one we can show you here. We have our little graphic here, which kind of shows you. I mean, we think we all know this, but we do this often, and it's always a good reminder. Even if you're not in the area that is currently warned upon right now, we are under the watch for the entirety of the morning and right up till 2 p.m. So, it too could impact you a little bit later this morning or into the midday. So we want you to be prepped, and we always talk about this. Obviously, an interior room is always key for your safety. We're talking about a hallway, potentially a bathroom, maybe a laundry room, but you want to put as much separation as you can between your person and the exterior wall of the house, and that is why it's always good. Every time I go to talk to school kids throughout the year, I always say, hey, look around your house, even on a sunny day, so you know where to go to be safe if indeed we do have severe weather, and that is always good to know. Basement, obviously ideal as well, but not everyone has that basement, so that interior room, and make sure you bring that device, and hopefully your device has been charged up, because it will tell you exactly how long the warnings are up for, and then you'll know how long that is. And that is the kind of the key here. Jordan, I just noticed here too, in addition, I'm just going to pull this up because we've got a lot of stuff happening here. The National Weather Service has now just issued a flash flood warning, because flash flooding is dangerous as well. A flash flood warning was issued now for DC. southern central Montgomery County, Arlington, northeastern Fairfax County, western portions of Alexandria and the city of Falls Church, because this same system, that's intense cell, which is continuing to spin through eastern Fairfax County, has also been putting down tremendous amounts of rain over the last hour or so. And now because of that, we now have this new flash flood warning in effect for portions of our area, including Northern Virginia. I'm going to try to pop over to that map so we can show you. But flash flood warnings are serious. I mean, flash flood warnings are no joke. You can see here, Jordan has highlighted that for, thank you so much right there. You can see those areas highlighted. That's the area that's been seeing the most rain. So that actually encompasses the west side of the Beltway, right on over to the American Legion Bridge. That is over towards, Tyson's area with the big intersection there with 66 inbound and outbound, and then continuing back around, let's say down across the Fairfax County Parkway. But when you see those rates that were popping up there, 1.5 to 2 inch an hour rates, I mean, that is some pretty intense rainfall. And because, let's see, I'm just looking here between, in just the last, let's say 20, 30 minutes, almost an inch of rain has fallen in this area. And the expected rainfall rate would lead this area in some isolated spots to see totals of 3 to 5 inches of rain in an hour if it were to continue at that intensity. And that is what leads to urban flooding, because although the ground has been so dry and we are under drought conditions, yes, you still can't put that much rain in the ground in a short period of time. And
right.
one of the good things here, when you had the prolonged 2 days of rain, that's one thing, Jordan. But if you get rainfall rates where they're saying, I mean, oh my goodness, 3 to 5 inches per hour, I mean, that's insane. That's intense.
Yeah, that's a good tropical summertime downpour. And now you just mentioned, Brian, it's the flash flooding concerns on top of the tornado concerns. Just from my experience being in the plains, I mean, if there's a tornado on the ground, that takes priority over flash flooding. But of course, we kind of get into the situation, Brian, where, when someone is seeing the threat of tornado warning and flash flood warning, as you can see, they're trimming it there. With tornado warning, we say, go inside, lowest level of the home. But with flash flooding, sometimes those lowest levels do tend to flood. So there can kind of be some inconsistent messaging whenever we talk about two of these warnings together. So that's why we're going to keep you safe through the rest of these warnings as they continue. I would still say the tornado warning is as of most concern based on the rainfall data, some of the rates. I don't think we're seeing widespread flash flooding at this time. I think that flash flood warning was just issued to be on the safe side, as likely there will be some flooded roadways coming soon, if not already. And of course, any low-level or homes that are in low flood-prone areas, those could start to see some flooding as well. But once we get rid of the tornado warning, we get rid of the spin in the atmosphere, which it does look like it's still starting to broaden out. I don't think it's as tight as it was over Charles County. We can eventually start to focus more on the flash flooding concerns. And of course, our crews are going to be out there this morning checking out the roads, checking out some of the other, and if there's any damage reports, which, Brian, we can pull those up and see if anything has come in the last couple of hours.
Yeah, I was looking at the LSRs a little while ago. I didn't see a ton except for down towards central Virginia. I just was kind of just zoomed in a little bit here. I mean, this tornado warning for portions of Alexandria and Fairfax. I mean, let's look at that. I mean, basically, the center line right there is Interstate 95, shooting right up through the middle there, and then dissecting there with a 495. So obviously a well-traveled and well-populated area. North Springfield over there on the backside of Beulah over towards the St. James, and eastward over towards Franconia, and even encompassing right now inside the Beltway over towards the edge there of Annandale. This system's still moving to the north at such a fast clip. We've been talking about the speed there continuing at about, 55 miles per hour. So it is moving pretty fast there as it continues that northerly trajectory. Currently, this warning is in effect until 6:45, so we're just kind of moments away. As you mentioned just a few moments ago, Jordan, as we continue to look at the different products there that we can look at, looking at the spin in the atmosphere and kind of identifying that we're seeing maybe a little bit less of that rotation, a little bit less of that spin kind of maybe potentially falling apart here. But still, if you're in that area from Franconia to Annandale, right there at the 495, which we used to call the mixing bowl, right there, 395, 95, 495 mix, that is where some of the most intense intensity is coming down at this hour. And once again, that warning in effect at least for 2 more minutes unless something changes here. If I switch this back over here to the radar, just showing you where else are we watching some of this moisture that is coming in, because we still have quite a bit of moisture out there that is headed our way, and we still have some of these flash flood warnings for some of our western counties, out for portions of our friends in the Shenandoah Valley, and then also the newer one that was just issued right here immediately on the west side of the city. So several concerns out there. We've been talking about it. Do not cross flooded roadways. As we continue to see these bands of moisture kind of rotating through, they will continue to put down heavier amounts of rain in those areas that see it isolated right over top of where they are located. Those are the areas that we are concerned most about, because obviously they're the ones that continue to be inundated. But until the center of circulation, the actual center of Debbie's leftover energy lifts north of our area, it's going to take some time, because it's going to be at that point when the atmosphere will lose some of that spin and start to calm down a little bit. And at that point, we could probably let our guards down just a little bit. But once again, we continue to watch for that tornado warning for 1 more minute for portions of Alexandria and Fairfax, and then the greater tornado watch for the entire metro area, which has now been expanded to take us all the way up until 2 o'clock this afternoon. In addition, there's flood watches that go into effect, that are in effect all the way up through 8 p.m. So there's several different factors that we're looking at here. And in addition to, as the system continues its trek northward, I'm also concerned as those winds will start to pick up into the afternoon. We've been talking about that a little bit as well. So if we do have some of these areas where we have seen some of this heavy rain coming down, and we also then see some of these gusty winds, if we have some areas where maybe the trees' root balls have been loosened, that could lead to potentially some trees down, some limbs down a little bit later, maybe even some power outages later as those winds continue to pick up. But as I said, we're counting down here just a few more seconds. It looks like they will drop this warning. And as they do so, go ahead, just Jordan.
Brian, I just want to highlight a couple of other areas that we'll have to watch. You mentioned, yes, there's the warning, boom, dropped right on schedule, but we're still watching the spin, and there's now a new area of interest just off Interstate 95 outside of Dale City. It's not warned as of now, but if it does, we'll be back here with the latest on that warning. So we're watching areas of broad rotation now.
All right, so no active current tornado warnings. There are active flood warnings, and we are under a tornado watch. We'll continue to keep an eye on it, and we'll be with you throughout the morning. Big thanks to my colleague Jordan Evans for helping out here this morning. I will toss it back over to Adriana as we take a little bit of a breather here just for a minute.
Yeah, nice job. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jordan, for keeping us all up to date on what's going on. I was actually on the phone with several friends of mine who live in Virginia. They were all in the basement heeding your advice, so good work to both of you. And remember to stay connected with the 7 News weather team here on air and anytime on social media at 7 News DC. You can always get alerts sent right to your phone by downloading that 7 News app. We're all going to take a breather. We'll be right back.